back for our continued analysis of propaganda narratives and blind spots they create for well-meaning Westerners, and how understanding history can reveal what lies are being marketed globally. Discussion of imperialism and the rights of indigenous people brings up a question. Just who are indigenous peoples anyway? Some are obvious. Australian Aborigines, Khoisan, Canadian First Nations, Sami. These are people still striving to follow cultural traditions and who are effectively the first people in their lands. But some peoples today, claimed as indigenous, actually represent a political chess move in an attempt for the third party to accomplish some geopolitical objective. If there is one big lesson I've learned from my study of history, it's that people move around a lot. Populations uproot and move, merge with others, divide into new groups, drift and resettle. Conquerors and empires come and go, and in the end, most people in the old world at least, Europe, Africa, and Asia, aren't quite who they think they are. And national epics are largely invented. One group that has been in the news in the past several years, due to their relationship with Russia and Ukraine, are the Crimean Tatars. It's claimed that they are the indigenous people of the Crimean Peninsula. But they're not. The Crimean Tatars are the Turco-Mongol descendants of the Golden Horde, who conquered the region in the 13th century, and who were in turn conquered by the Russians, and Crimea annexed into the Russian Empire in the 18th century. The Crimean Tatars are settler colonists from a prior, now fallen empire. The indigenous claim is advanced largely by Turkey, apparently as part of a neo-Ottoman imperial ambition in the Black Sea. The assumption is an independent Crimean Tatar state would be a natural client state to Turkey, and may even be amenable to annexation. Similarly, the Zulus, a prominent ethnic group in South Africa, have a rich history shaped by a complex cultural tapestry of different cultures and migrations. The actual indigenous peoples of South Africa are the Khoi and the San, who mostly live in the western parts of South Africa. Around 1000 AD, Bantu-speaking peoples began to migrate into South Africa, conquering and bringing their language and their own culture with them. By the 1500s, by 1500 AD, the Ngoro kingdoms had emerged, and they eventually united into the Zulu Empire in 1816. These are the campaigns of Shaka Zulu. But the thing to realize is the Boers, those Dutch, European descent peoples living in South Africa, arrived in the 1600s. So the Boers were established before the Zulus were. So despite this, there's a common Western misconception about the Zulus that, being black, they are assumed to be the original inhabitants of South Africa. This oversimplification overlooks the intricate history of various ethnic groups and their contributions to the vibrant mosaic of South African culture. Sometimes the history is a little bit more complicated and requires conflating the crimes of one group with the actions of another. We see this in the common assumptions about Latin America and colonialism. The historical landscape of Latin America is marked by the complex aftermath of Spanish colonization. With the exception of Brazil and a few smaller regions, the entire expanse of South and Central America, and even large parts of North America, were part of the Spanish Empire, and collectively known as Nueva España, or New Spain. However, not all empires are the same. Mexico, for example, derives its name from the Mexica, which was a cultural linguistic group in central Mexico. More specifically, the Mexica are what we normally think of when we think of the Aztecs. The city of Mexico City was formerly Tenochtitlan. The Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan became Mexico City. It's similar to how Byzantium became Constantinople, and then after the Ottoman conquest became Istanbul. So, the fate of the Aztecs unfolded through a complex interplay of alliances and conflicts with figures like Cortez, the kingdom of the Tlaxcala, and the action of Montezuma II. The Maya, on the other hand, their civilization declined about 2 centuries before the Spanish even arrived, although the Maya descendants are still there in Yucatan, in Guatemala and Honduras. The assimilation strategies of the Spanish, though, are very different than what the English did. The Spanish sought to co-opt and absorb the indigenous peoples into a blended culture. One of the big areas we see this, and this is something that's quite a surprise to many people, is what happened to the descendants of Montezuma II, or Atahualpa, the Inca ruler. Well, they are actually now living in Spain. They are noble families, married into European noble and royal families, and have been for 500 years. After their domains were absorbed by Spain, their descendants became Spanish, but they retained their social rank. That is, the Spanish absorbed the Native American cultures. They absorbed their ruling class, co-opted their ruling class. Examining the liberal perspective on anti-imperialism reveals certain blind spots that merit attention. Acknowledging the historical reality that humans migrate and empires rise and fall, it is essential to recognize that every culture has at some point been an imperialist power. Every culture, everyone are settler colonists. However, the current claims about supporting indigenous peoples can be exploited by those who want to prop up one group as being indigenous when they really aren't indigenous, really in order to assert their own claim to that territory. The Enlightenment values that have historically uplifted humanity are commendable, but when a challenge arises, when actors like Russians construct a narrative where democracy and freedom are maligned and obedience to corrupt dictators is championed, this manipulation can turn Western liberals into unwitting tools, into useful idiots. Moreover, the assertion of indigenous identity is not always straightforward, as descendants of former conquerors may employ it to justify opposition to current inhabitants in places like Israel, Crimea, South Africa, and parts of India and Myanmar. The overarching lesson is that context is everything, and a nuanced awareness and collective honesty is crucial to navigating the complexity of geopolitical dynamics. Thank you for watching, and if you haven't already, please remember to like and subscribe.